Guys, happy Tuesday. I hope you had a great 4-day weekend. I'm going to be reading to you chapter 10 of our story, Jack. Remember, you also have the PDFs in Google Classroom that if you want to read them with your parents or your siblings, you can always do that, or you can listen to me read them. So, chapter 10, Fee, Fi, Fo, Fum. The king lifted a golden spoon and crashed it into the pudding, narrowly missing me. A moment later, the spoon plunged down right next to my ear. King Barf ate it with speed and greed, scooping up more as soon as he had shoveled the last glob into his mouth. I dodged one bite and then another, and as the pudding dish cleared, I made my way toward the edge. Just when I thought I was out of danger, the spoon scooped beneath my feet and scraped me against the edge of the dish. Suddenly, I was barreling toward the king's mouth, a huge cave lined with yellowish boulders. I was going to be eaten by a giant. The spoon tipped. I slid down into a squishy, slimy tongue. The mouth cave closed and everything went black. King Barf's tongue squished me to the roof of his mouth. Luckily, the king chewed with his mouth open, so every bite I got just enough light to dodge his teeth. Luckily, when his mouth didn't open wide enough for me to escape without being sliced in half on the way out. I slid to the back of the throat and kicked out my legs. The tongue swelled up in defense and squished me hard. But I yanked and twisted and punched. The king gagged and coughed once, twice, and with a great gust of foul breath shot me out of his mouth. I soared past the pudding and right over the candlestick, narrowly missing the flame, and landed plop in a hot green pond. Some of the liquid splashed into my mouth. Blech! Green bean soup. I swam to the shore of the Treen, seeking shelter in the crevice where the ladle rested. I had nearly been eaten, but it looked like I'd escaped miraculously with no giant teeth marks. The king coughed and hacked some more. This pudding is full of gristle, he spat in a cold, nasal voice. Servant, take this disgusting mush away from me. A servant picked up the dish and walked quickly out of the room. But before he disappeared, I saw him dig his hands into the pudding and stuff some into his mouth. No food goes to waste in a famine. The king took another dish and went on with shoveling food in his mouth. Crumbs and juice dribbled down the table. Cluck, cluck. Snakes and toads. There was a giant chicken on the table. A live hen pecking at King's Barf scraps. She was attached to the king's wrist by a gold chain, and the king stroked her feathers while he ate. Across from the king sat a giant woman, the queen, I believed. She had fair skin, bright blue eyes, golden hair, and ruby red lips. She was very beautiful, except every now and then her tongue flicked out like a frog's. In her lap, the queen held a giant baby. The prince, I guessed, not more than a year old, with chubby cheeks, two shiny sharp teeth, and a foundation of drool dripping down on the queen's plate. Fee, fee, fo, the giant baby said as he pounded on the table. The king glowered at the baby as though he smelled something foul. You must bring that troll to supper, woman. Or must you bring that troll to supper, woman? My name is not Woman, she said defiantly. It's Queen Opal, and that is not a troll. He's your son and heir and has more right to be at the table than that animal. The king petted the hen. My treasure shall stay with me everywhere I go. Isn't that so, magician? The king addressed another giant who sat between the king and queen. He had a carroty orange hair that stuck up in all directions and eyes that looked permanently mystified. Oh, yes, your goddess, said the magician. Nothing is so important as your treasure. Yes, you are my only delight, my treasure, the king cooed, and then shouted, Lay! Suddenly the hen went rigid, trembled a little, gave a loud squawk, and laid an egg. The king seized the egg, held it up to the candlelight. It was not an ordinary egg, neither brown nor white, nor even blue or speckled. It was gold. That hen just laid a golden egg. The magician clapped his hands fast 3 times. Oh, very good, your Goldess. That is such clever magic, is it not? Thank you, magician, said the king. It is clever magic, though it would be even cleverer if you could make more. Ever since the queen stopped spinning golden straw, my gold simply is running dangerously low. The queen's eyes grew wide with fear. She flicked out her tongue. The magician sat up straight in his chair like a soldier at attention. I'm trying ever so hard, your Goldess. Yesterday I nearly succeeded in turning a scullery maid's hair to gold. I was certain I had it right. I'll never understand why it caught fire. The king waved his hand dismissively. It's all out of consequence to me if you set someone's hair on fire. I only wish you could make another golden hen, or a golden goose, or something. I do fear treasure is wearing out, just like the queen. Then what will I do? The magician shifted mournfully. Indeed, I did try to make a golden goose, but the fist froze into a statue, and the second laid eggs of coal, not gold. So I gave that one to the blacksmith for fires. Only I don't think he appreciated it because he chopped off his head off right away and cooked it for supper. The king clutched his hen close to his chest. Don't let that brute near my treasure. Bark, bark, said the hen. Fee, fee, laughed the baby and pounded on the table while globs of drool ran down his chin. Oh, take that slimy thing away, barked King. He turned to the queen. What is that horrid dress you're wearing? Haven't you any golden gown? Queen Opal shuddered. I don't like to wear gold. It irritates my skin. How can you not like gold? Said the king. I can't stand to wear anything but gold. It's the coziest thing in the world, isn't it, treasure? Lay! The hen seized up, trembled, and expelled another golden egg. That hen would serve better for a supper, said the queen. Your subjects have hardly any food at all, so I hear. What are you talking about? Said the king. We have plenty of food. It comes in by the wagon load nearly every day. From the elf lands below, shouted the queen. And how long can it possibly last? It's all so tiny. How many elf villages are there? How should I know? Said the king. Ask your brothers. They're the ones who go down to that filthy place. Frederick and Bruno. My ears perked up at that. Frederick and Bruno. They must be the brutes who had taken Papa. Yes, said the king. They've finally proven useful to me, unlike you and your treasure house or your treacherous father. You're lucky you didn't suffer his fate after I found out you could no longer spin straw into gold. The queen flicked out her tongue. You can't exile me, not when I have Archie. She clutched her baby to her chest. Well, thankfully your brothers are working to pay off the debt. They're in the armory now, I believe, preparing for another raid. But the elf food is so tiny, said the queen, picking up a potato between her fingers. How long can it possibly feed us? What does it matter? When we run out, we get more. There's always more. But what about the elves? Isn't that stealing? Asked the queen. Aren't you afraid they'll get angry? Yes, it was stealing, and yes, I was angry. What can they possibly do? They're no bigger than my finger. Sometimes small things have a way of surprising you, said the queen. Fee, fum, sang the baby. The king stabbed his fork into a hunk of meat and stuffed it into his mouth. He spoke while he chewed. That village was under my kingdom and therefore under my rule. All the food, all the animals, all the land, all the elves you name, even if they are purely small. Well, that doesn't seem fair, said the queen. How would you like it if a giant came down from the sky and stole all of your gold? The king choked and laughed. Don't be ridiculous. I'm too powerful to be defeated. I'd chop off their head. If you're so powerful, why can't you grow food? Or make it with magic? Can't you have your magician make you more food? The magician perked up. Yes, yes, of course I could. I'll turn this fork into a carrot. Not my gold, cried the king. Pick something else. That thing there. He pointed to baby Prince, who was gnawing on a piece of bread. Oh, goody goody, said the magician, reaching for the baby. The queen slapped him away. Not my Archie, you monster. Turn yourself into food. The magician screwed up his face. I suppose I could. I never thought of that. You're very clever, Your Majesty. Yes, I think that could work. He held his hand very close to his face. He went cross-eyed as he mumbled some words very quickly under his breath. His fingers began to stretch and grow. They got longer and more pointed. They turned a little green, then white and orange, until finally all 5 fingers on his left hand were long, pointy carrots. The green sprouted over his knuckles and bunched at the wrists like frilly cuff. Finger food, said the magician. I can't see that part. How convenient. No need to worry, Your Majesty. If we run out of food, we can simply eat ourselves. The queen stared at him in horror. The king laughed and stuffed some bread into his mouth. Fee, fee, fo! The baby was up on the table now. He dug his hands into a bowl of potatoes and stuffed them into his mouth, smearing potato all over his face and belly. Fum, he said, smiling and clapping his hands so the potatoes sprayed everywhere. Then he looked right at me. Snakes and toads, I had been sprouted. Fee, fee, fum! The baby crawled so fast I hardly had time to blink. I slipped back into the soup. Maybe if he didn't see me, he would go away. No, Archie! The queen shouted just as the baby pounded his fist to the edge of the tureen. I went gushing out of the bowl on a wave of gooey green beans. I spattered onto the baby's belly and slid down into the doughy folds of his legs. Fee-fo! The baby poked and prodded and tried to pick me up, but when we were both too slimy and slippery with soup, and luckily his chubby hands could not grasp me. Get that slimy creature off the table! Shouted the king. The queen picked up the baby as I crawled onto the butter dish. She held the prince out at arm's length. He was covered with soup, and he wiggled in the queen's arms and spattered green slime on her face and blue gown. How disgusting, said the king. He looks like a prince of frogs. Ooh, ooh, I can turn him into a frog, said the magician, clapping his hands so excitedly one of his carrot fingers snapped right off. Oh, let me, please, please, please. Don't you touch him, said the queen. Haven't you done enough harm? But I think he'd be charming for a frog, don't you, your goldness? Could you make him lay golden frog eggs? Asked the king. You're horrid, shouted the queen. Don't you think of anything else besides gold? What else is there to think of? Food, said the queen, and family. Pfft, we have plenty of food, and of course I've thought about family. As I said, your brothers are preparing for another raid on the elves. Tomorrow they'll feed the kingdom. The king petted the hen, and she chuckled, and I shall have my gold too. Now lay. The hen obeyed. Lay, lay, lay. The hen shuddered violently, but released 3 more eggs. See, he challenged the queen, gold is my destiny. And with that he marched out of the room, cradling the hen in his arms. The magician followed like a faithful pup, trotting in his heels. All gold comes with a curse. Fee, fi, fo, fum, said the baby, and he put a slimy hand in one of the queen's face, splotching her with green. As for you, Prince Frog, time for a swim, and may you prove to be a better king than your father. And the queen carried the giant baby away, leaving me alone on the butter. Now that lunch was over, I needed to go to the armory to find the giants who had taken Papa.